okay, so if they're spiritual beings, which I believe they are, like it's a binary. They're either, you're on team good or team bad. You can assign any name to it you want, but like, what are these things? Are they good or bad?
It's so beyond our comprehension that they're still trying to piece it together. Like,
here I am, an ocean scientist for 3.5 decades, and I sit in a lot of meetings with leading ocean scientists still today, but it kind of mystifies me that more people aren't intellectually curious about what the story of the century is, and that's these that are occurring in the water.
Hey guys, welcome back to Liminal Period. It's your girl Chun-Li Shoddy. Today I wanted us to put our tinfoil hats on because we're going to be talking about the supernatural. Today I want to take a look at the interview that Joe Rogan had with Tucker Carlson, and specifically I want to take a look at the portion where Tucker was explaining why he changed his mind on aliens. As some of you guys might know, Tucker appears to be a religious, conservative, right-leaning journalist. And so I think it's very interesting to hear someone of his background speak on aliens or UAPs, UFOs, USOs, whatever it may be. I just think it's going to be an interesting conversation, and I can't wait to get into it. So let's go ahead.
Okay, so if they're spiritual beings, which I believe they are, like it's a binary. They're either, you're on team good or team bad. You can assign any name to it you want, but like, what are these things? Are they good or bad? And I think some of them are bad. And if the U.S. government knows that, or elements, the people within the U.S. government know that, then they're serving a bad force. And
well, when you say spiritual, like what makes you draw that conclusion that they're spiritual?
What's the obvious? I mean, spiritual may be the wrong word. Supernatural. They're beyond nature as we understand it. I mean, obviously they are. I mean, just chart their physical behavior. It doesn't, it goes outside of what we understand about physics. No visible means of propulsion, coming at indescribable speed, hitting the ocean, continuing at speeds that are impossible undersea. I mean, in other words, if I take a 9mm round or 7.62 by 39 and shoot you at 50 yards underwater in a swimming pool, and it's even more intense in salt water because it's denser, you could catch the bullet if it even makes it to you, right? So if you have a craft, any object underwater that's traveling at 500 knots as measured by sonar, right there you're challenging our understanding of physics. Like, what is that? How can that be? So yeah.
They've tracked that? They've tracked things going 500 knots under the sea?
Yeah, really. Yeah, much faster than any object can actually go undersea. Yo, for sure. Oh, yeah.
So yes, Joe, the U.S. government has tracked unidentified submerged objects going underwater, going underseas, moving at speeds that the U.S. government and technology cannot compete with. However, do I know if it's actually 500 knots? I'm not 100% sure. I'm actually going to show a clip a little bit more about what Navy Admiral Tim Gallaudet has to say, as well as some footage of USOs that the U.S. Navy has captured. So do stick around towards the end of the video to check it out. But let's get back to what Joe and Tucker are saying.
A lot. And there's video of these things coming out of the sky into the water and also emerging from the water.
Right.
Yeah. So
you're talking about the Tic Tac.
I don't think it's that
transmedium video
for sure. So, but there's just
we just have access to it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Just we haven't seen it.
Correct.
So they have some stuff
for sure. So, but there's just a lot going on underwater, and it's measured. And so, whatever. I mean, these are all, again, this is like the most obvious observable level of it. But then you just ask yourself, like, what is this actually? And, if there's been extensive knowledge of this for decades, like maybe 80 years at least, if not going back to the 30s, 90 years, to what end? So there are two possible explanations, obvious explanations. The first is the one you often hear, which is this is so heavy that if the public were to know about it, it would be just disruptive. It'd be too scary. Like, you don't want to scare people for no good reason. There's nothing we can do about it.
The U.S. public wouldn't really be able to handle it. I mean, to be quite honest, the Congress and the United Nations have had several different meetings that are actually aired live and available on YouTube regarding UAPs and extraterrestrial phenomena. And whenever I look at the number of views that those videos have or those live streams have, it doesn't even compare with some of these smaller channels on YouTube. Like, some of these congressional hearings or these congressional meetings have actually less views than some of my videos. And I don't have many subscribers. So that's showing you how much the public actually gives two shits about things that are actually concerning to our national security, and not just national security as in the United States security, but I think some of this technology and some of the powers at B are not of any nation. They're not Russians, they're not Chinese, they're not Americans. That's not who you need to fear. Like, that's who you need to fear here in America. But legit, like, again, this is why I told you to put your tinfoil hats on, because we're going for it, okay? But there might be extra powers out there that are controlling all of this, or at least witnessing all of this, and they might have something to do with why we are as advanced as we are as humans. And I don't know. Let's go down that rabbit hole another day, but I do want to get back to what Tucker was saying. I just wanted to say I understand why the public might not be able to accept this or understand this.
And you also don't want to suggest that, the U.S. military isn't capable of protecting the country, the homeland. And it does suggest that.
Which is
can't
probably
control
the
these
case.
objects in your airspace, and that's known. If they can't, that's known, okay? Then that's just a limit to the power of the U.S. military, and you don't want to tell people that, because then they won't believe that they're safe. I get it. But then there's a deeper level, which is okay, what's your relationship with these things? What is the U.S. government's relationship with these things? And there's evidence that there is a relationship and that it's a longstanding. And that raises a lot of questions about intent. And so what is that? And I just personally decided, and people have been hurt by these things. That's a fact. That's a fact. It's a knowable fact. It's a provable fact. And killed. And I'm not saying millions of people have been killed by whatever these things are, but people have been killed, and it's known because it's working its way through the courts out of the VA. So, I don't know, an object that is by definition supernatural, it's above the laws of nature as we understand them, and that has resulted in the deaths of people. We don't spend enough time thinking what that adds up to. Not good. Actually, not good.
And how many people do you think have died from these
I
things?
don't know, but I mean,
And is it radiation sickness? Is it what's the
so
cause
the person
of
that
death?
I talked to, I interviewed someone who was a Stanford medical school professor who's out there and worth talking to, by the way. And
You talking about Garry Nolan?
that's exactly who I'm talking about. Who's effectively an expert witness in these cases, so he's an expert in brain injury. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also included a little piece about Garry Nolan towards the end of the video, because I think it's very interesting to hear about these UAPs and extraterrestrial ideas and phenomena from people who have everything to lose and nothing to gain.
Incredible person. Checks all the boxes that I care about. He's got patents, so he's like a lot of Stanford University professors. He's independently rich. He flew to, I live in Aurora Mason, he flew to my place at his own expense because he wanted to tell his story. So he's got no profit motive here. He's the most highly credentialed person at the university, practically, Stanford Medical School. We consider that a big deal. And he's worked on this for over 10 years, assessing the injuries to U.S. servicemen from being in close proximity to these objects or having contact with these objects. And his conclusion, as you know, because you've talked to him, is that there's some kind of energy coming off here that scrambles people's brains or kills them. And it's not exactly radiation, at least in his telling to me. So anyway, but the point is, people have died.
Yeah.
And so, it does raise a lot of questions about what the hell, right? What the
Yeah.
hell? American citizens have died and you're hiding it? Why are you hiding that? Why would you hide that?
Perhaps because they don't have any explanation.
So, of course, it's not just the U.S. government that's hiding it from its citizens, but it's going to be all of the governments and the powers that be that are hiding it from its citizens. And again, I think it's because it's information that is only going to disrupt us off of the course that they want us to be on. Because I feel like if we knew that aliens or there were higher beings than us, then everything that we do here and everything that we're worrying about and everything that we're currently being distracted by in order for us to be easily manipulated and controlled, I feel like all of that would be gone to waste for these people that are currently in control. Okay. And so I think that is one reason why they're keeping the information from us. Because if we actually know what is out there, or we know what the next chapter looks like after death, then I think there's very limited leverage that they have over us. You know, if we understand that everything literally is a social construct, and we actually take that into consideration when we're making our day-to-day choices, then that's really going to affect their pocketbooks. Like, that's going to affect their wallets. That's going to affect the amount of money and the amount of things that they can sell to us. Because at the end of the day, most people are consumers, and we're the reason why they're rich. So you got to keep us preoccupied with racism and sexism and feminism and transphobia and fat phobia and all of these other topics that we talk about here on this channel. We have to be distracted by that, because a lot of the times in my videos, I'm bewildered by why any of these things are even trending topics. Like, why is any of this things that we're concerned about today? Like, I thought we've figured it out, but I think it really is because they don't want us to figure it out. They don't want us to, because when we figure it out and we realize what life is about, and I mean human life, when we realize what makes us happy and what makes life worth living, then they take all the control and the power away. Because at the end of the day, what makes life worth living and what makes us happy aren't going to be those consumer items. It's not going to be the apps and the handbags and the shoes and the cars and the houses. And yes, I am guilty of it too, because at the end of the day, I still live in my current reality. But I think answering Tucker and Joe's question on why they don't want us to know, it's because they want us to be distracted. They don't want us to care. They don't.
Our comprehension, that they're still trying to piece it together. Like, I would wonder how much interaction they really do have with these things. Like, if I was from another planet, or if I was some interdimensional being, I don't know how much I'd give a shit about the president. I don't know how much I'd give a shit about the government. I would probably look at this infantile race, this species, this bizarre territorial apes with thermonuclear weapons, this very weird species. I'd probably look at them as very chaotic, and I wouldn't really have much concern for who's running it, especially if they have the ability to travel at insane speeds and go undetected. And
well, it depends. Like that. Okay, so the template that you're using to understand this is like science fiction, right? These are an advanced race of beings from somewhere else. But the template that every other society before us has used is a spiritual one. Mm-hmm. There is a whole world that we can't see that acts on people, a supernatural world that's acting on us all the time for good and bad. Every society has thought this before ours. In fact, every society in all recorded history has thought that until, I'll be specific, August 1945, when we dropped the atom bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And all of a sudden, the West is just officially secular. We're God. There is no God but us. And that's the world that we have grown up in. But that's an anomaly. Like, no one else has ever thought that. There's never been a society that thought that. Every other society has assumed, and they've had all kinds of different explanations, and the details differ, but the core idea does not differ, never has differed from caves until now, that we're being acted on by spiritual forces.
So I haven't had a chance to take a look at the different stories from around the world in regards to aliens and extraterrestrial. However, I do know that there's a lot of similarities within stories from around the world. Like, you do have the story of a massive flood, you know, Noah's Ark. You have that same story within all religions, and you have it from China to India to South America. So I do think there are certain stories that transcend cultural borders, and they transcend physical borders and religion. So I think that's really interesting. And so maybe we can do a deep dive into that in another day. Again, while we have our tinfoil hats on, I've been getting real deep in the wormhole with the Anunnakis. So I don't know, have you guys? But anyways, yeah, I want to look a little bit more into what Tucker is saying as far as extraterrestrial. Maybe he's talking about the Anunnakis. Maybe. I don't know.
By spiritual forces. at all times. And so to someone born before or living before 1945, I think it would have been much more obvious that this is the thing that every society has written about. And in fact, that battle, that unseen battle around us, that spiritual battle, has like been the basis of every society, of every religion, not just Christianity. So like it just, once you discard your very, very recent assumptions, relatively speaking, about how the world works, you're like, well, that kind of seems like the obvious explanation.
Okay, so guys, Tucker's very similar to me in that he is just curious. You know, it's kind of hard to have a steadfast stance on religion when science seems to be the very opposite of religion. And again, I'm still on my journey of spiritual growth and everything else. But I think it's very interesting to find certain individuals to also be religious as well as understanding facts and science. And I think that Tucker is still on his journey as well. And I'm assuming most curious people in general are. I know Candace Owens just recently switched over to Catholicism. So I think that most people are on a journey. And I think that that's a very normal human thing. But anyways, like I said, I want to share some clips from Timothy Gallaudet and his team on what they found on USOs. I enjoyed having our conversation today. I'll talk again with you guys next time. Bye.
Panel. Timothy Gallaudet, retired U.S. Navy Rear Admiral, former Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Oceans and Atmosphere within the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Here I am, an ocean scientist for 3.5 decades, and I sit in a lot of meetings with leading ocean scientists still today, but it kind of mystifies me that more people aren't intellectually curious about what the story of the century is, and that's these that are occurring in the water.
We're being visited by non-human intelligence with technology we really don't understand, and with intentions we don't understand at all either.
Now that really does surprise me to hear that from a former very high-ranking flag officer in the US Navy, to actually say you're stating categorically that you believe NHI, non-human intelligence, are real.
Absolutely. I think it's about time that we do disclose that we are in contact with non-human intelligence.
Gallaudet calls for action to uncover the unknown unknowns associated with UAP and USOs due to the concerning non-reaction of the DoD regarding unidentified objects with unexplainable characteristics entering U.S. water space. Enter and exit the Atlantic Ocean without any significant deceleration, reach a maximum underwater velocity of 95 miles per hour, and at one point split into 2 parts before entering the water again. The SCU authorities concluded that no known aircraft, naval vessel, projectile, or human-made technology possesses these characteristics or capabilities.
I mean, if you go back to the whole notion of, okay, how long has this been around? It didn't just start showing up in 1947, right? There are stories going back, into the 1800s of people who saw things in their farm fields. It's in local newspapers from the 1800s. It's fascinating. But if you can go even further back, so how would you, as a higher intelligence, represent yourself to a lesser intelligence? Well, let's go back to pre-civilization. Maybe you show yourself as the spirits in the forest, and you give messages through that. Once you get a little bit more civilized, then you show yourself as the gods, and then you're God. Well, we don't believe in God anymore necessarily. Not everybody does. So what do we believe in? We believe in technology. So you show yourself as a form of technology, right? But the common thread is you're not alone, and there's something else here with you, and there's something that's, as you said, watching you, and at least watching over your shoulder. But I think that, like any good parent, you don't tell your student everything. You make them learn.